It's always you guys. Well, good morning, everyone. So glad to be with you this morning. I'm glad to be home. Had a great meeting in Graham, Texas. Paul and Laura Hammonds send their love to you and appreciation for letting them borrow me for a week. But I am, as I always say, there's no place like home, and I'm so glad to be back with you. Today we're going to pick up where we had left off 2 weeks ago in Nehemiah. Today we're going to jump into chapter 3, because chapter 3 is more of a narrative and sort of a historical recording of the building of the wall. We're going to read through chapter 3, and I do have a few questions that will apply to that. But chapter 4 is really where more of the lessons are, and so we're going to try to do 3 and 4 today. We'll just see how far we get. And so if you're open to chapter 3, we're going to begin there. Just by quick way of review, chapters 1 and 2, we have a situation where Nehemiah gets word that Jerusalem is still in shambles. And he reacts to this in a very negative way as far as reactions go. He's very upset to hear that his city is still in ruins, as the wall is no more. And so what does he do? What does he do when he gets word for this? First thing he does, he prays. The first thing he does is not go complain. Right? The first thing he does is he doesn't gossip or talk about the people who have been back there for a while now and should have been doing this work. He doesn't complain. He doesn't gossip. The first thing he does is he prays to God. What's the second thing he does? Well, we know that he's the cupbearer, which is a very important role in the kingdom. And he clearly has a good relationship with the king, because the next thing he does is he goes to the king and he asks the king if he can go. What does the king say? Yeah, man. How long are you going to be gone? And because Nehemiah is prepared, he's prepared to do the work, he's prepared to go back and do something, he's able to give the king a detailed answer. I'm going to go and I'm going to be gone this long, and I need you to send me some letters so that I can pick up supplies along the way, that when I get there I can make sure the work is done efficiently. Right? And he praises the king for it, and the king recognizes this, and he sends him on his way. And when he gets to Jerusalem, he has to do some scouting. He has to do some looking around, and he does so by night. Why do you think he did that at night? That's right. That's right. If someone is giving you a guided tour, what are they going to show you? All the good stuff. See, it's not that bad, man. We got this, and going at night, he's able to look at it for himself. He's able to take inventory himself and determine just how bad it is, and it's bad. And so that's where we left off on chapter 2. The last verse of chapter 2 says, "So I responded to them with a word and said to them, the God of heaven will give us success. Therefore, we, his slaves, will arise and build. But you have no portion, right, or remembrance in Jerusalem." Who's he talking to? He's got a couple of knuckleheads back in Jerusalem. What are their names? Sanballat and who? Tobiah. Okay. And these guys, from the get-go, are talking this thing down. They're trying to discourage him right away. There's a spiritual application there that I think sometimes we may or may not see. But that whenever Nehemiah had determined to go back and do the Lord's work, right away there's naysayers. Right away there's someone trying to discourage him from doing what needs to be done. And so I love Nehemiah's response. He doesn't fire back at them with something ugly. He doesn't get into a shouting match or an insulting match. He just says, the God of heaven will give success. We're going to rise and build. And you guys have no part in it. And I love that. It's just very to the point, matter of fact. And I think there's a lesson there for us. That whenever we find ourselves in situations where people are trying to discourage us from doing what we know is right, from doing the things that we ought to do, we know that the world is going to come at us. And rather than getting into shouting matches, right, rather than getting into back and forths, you can just basically say, well, I'm going to do what God said. God's going to be with me, and wish them well. Right? We don't have to get into the standoff, I think, sometimes that we feel we need to. God doesn't need us to defend him. He's the God of the universe. He can do that on his own. What we need to do is stay on task. We've been given a mission. Right? We've been given a job to do while we're here. And rather than getting distracted and getting discouraged, know that God is with us. Isn't that what he said in the Great Commission? When he said, go into all the world and make disciples, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. What else did he say there? What else was the promise there? I will be with you to the end of the earth. I will be with you to the end of the age, some translations say. And so the idea there is the same here. God is with him, and Nehemiah knew it. And that's the kind of confidence that really comes through early in this book, is the confidence that he has in his God. There's no amount of discouragement that's going to come at him and shake him or keep him from his task. And I think that's worth noting. Any other questions or comments about reviewing chapter 1 and 2? Yeah.
I was just thinking here, looking at verse 19, it's about the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, Geshem the Arab. These are all men in Jerusalem, right? I mean, it says something about the state of things. These were all the peoples that they were supposed to conquer or to be external. Had they followed and continued in God's plan, it would just be the Jews that were there. But now you've got all these other peoples, because of them being conquered and so forth, that are also now living in this area and having some measure of influence. And I mean, one of these guys is noted as an official.
Yeah.
There's some leadership and some things there. So
that's worth noting. Right? I mean, these aren't just regular guys or guys that aren't important per se. Not that anybody is unimportant, but you see the significance.
Where's the Jewish leadership? How come they're not there supporting and engaging and coming to his aid, that kind of thing?
That's a good question. That's a good question. So keep that in mind as we read chapter 3. Now listen, y'all bear with me. Chapter 3 has a lot of names that are hard to pronounce. I'm going to mess some of these up. Just bear with me. Just know that you pronounce them however you do in your head, and just pretend like I said it that way. Because these are names that we don't say every day. I don't know anybody named some of these names we're going to read. And so just bear with me as we read through these. And again, there's not a great deal of lessons. There are some lessons in this chapter for us, but really this is more of a narrative historical account of what happened. And that's important in and of itself, and we'll talk about that after I read through it. So if you have your Bibles open, let's look to chapter 3, and we'll begin reading there in verse 1. Then Eliashib, the high priest, arose with his brothers, the priests, and built the sheep gate. They set it apart as holy and made it store stand. And they set it apart as holy to the wall, the Tower of 100, and the Tower of Hananel. Next to him, the men of Jericho built. Next to them, Sakur, son of Imri, built. The sons of Hassanah built the fish gate, and laid its beams, and made its doors and stands with bolts and bars. And next to Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, made repairs. And next to them, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, the son of Meshezabel, made repairs. And next to them, Zadok, son of Bana, also made repairs. And moreover, next to them, Tekoites made repairs, but their nobles did not support their service of their masters. Joada, son of Paseah, the Meshullam, the son of Bosadiah, repaired the old gate and laid its beams and made doors and stand with its bolts and bars. Next to them, Melatiah, the Gibeonite, Jadon, the Meronthonite, men of Gibeah, Mizpah, made repairs the official seat of the governor of the province of the river. Next to them, Uziel, the son of Harahiah, the goldsmith, made repairs. And next to them, Hananiah, one of the perfumers, made repairs. And they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. Next to them, Repahiah, son of Hur, the official half of the district of Jerusalem, made repairs. Next to them, Jediah, son of Haramath, made repairs opposite his house. Next to him, Hattush, the son of Hashib, well, you can read it, made repairs. Malachiah, the son of Haram, the son of Hasab, and the son of Yeah, good luck with that. Repaired another section of the tower of furnaces. Next to them, Shallum the son of Haloesh, the half of districts of Jerusalem, made repairs, and its sons and daughters. Hanun, the inhabitants of Zanoah, repaired the valley gate, and they built it and made its doors with its bolts and its bars, and 1,000 cubits of the wall and the dung gate. And Malchijah, son of Rechab, the official of the district of Beth-Haccherem, repaired the dung gate. He built it and made its doors stand with its bolts and its bars. Shallum, son of Kolhezah, son of district of Mizpah, repaired the spring gate. He built it, covered it, and made its doors stand with its bolts and bars, and the wall of Pool Shelah, the king's garden, as far as the steps that descend from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah, son of Azbuk, official of the half-district of Beth-zur, made repairs as far as a point opposite the tombs of David, and as far as the artificial pool in the house of the mighty men. After him, the Levites made repairs under Rehum, the son of Benai. Next to him, Hashabiah, the official of the half of the district of Keilah, made repairs in the district. And after him, brothers made repairs under Bavai, the son of Henadad, the official of the other half of the district of Keilah. Next to him, Ezer, son of Jeshua, the official of Mizpah, repaired another section of the front accent of the armory of Angle. And after him, Baruch, the son of Zabai, zealously repaired another section from the angle of the doorway in the house of Eliashib, the high priest. And after him, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired another section of the doorway of Eliashib's house, even as far as the end of Eliashib's house. And after him, the priests and the men of the valley made repairs, thank goodness. And after them, Benjamin and Hasub made repairs in front of their house. And after them, Azariah, son of Messiah, son of Ananiah, made repairs beside his house. And after him, Benui, the son of Henadad, repaired another section from the house of Azariah as far as the angle, as far as the corner. Palal, the son of Uzziah, made repairs in front of the angle tower, projecting from the upper house of the king, which was by the court of the guard. And after him, Pedadiah, son of Parosh, made repairs. The temple servants living in Ophel made repairs as the front of the water gate toward the east and the projecting tower. And after them, the Tekoites repaired another section in front of the great projecting tower in front of his house. And after them, Zadok, son of Immer, made repairs in front of the house. And after him, Shemaiah, son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate, made repairs. And after him, Hananiah, son of Shelemiah, the Hanun, the sixth son of Zaloph, repaired another section. And after him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, made repairs in front of his own quarters. And after him, Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths, made repairs as far as the house of the servants and the merchants in front of the inspection gate, and as far as the upper room and the corner, between the upper room and the corner and the sheep gate, and the goldsmiths and the merchants made repairs. Whew. You see why I wanted you to teach this chapter? What do we have going on here? We have a lot of repairs being made. We have a lot of work going on. But do you notice how detailed it is? Why do you think Nehemiah went to such lengths to give us such great detail about this?
There was a lot of work to be done, for one. It was going to take a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Matt, any chance you could put me on slide 17? I mean, I can just go through them all, I guess, but. George.
It's a history. It's not just a story.
Yeah.
It's proof that these are the ones.
Yes.
Like, we got decorations of graveyards around here this week and next week and all this money. And I'm not usually into all that, but my mom was. And I actually went and put some great, and her dad and mother, and and I thought about them. Yeah, and it's telling people that did stuff, yeah, he's
It's a record,
Yeah.
right? This is a record. This is just like reading First and Second Chronicles, the first couple chapters of both those books.
Yeah, it's real big.
It's grueling, right? There's names that we don't know how to pronounce, names that we don't use. It's totally unfamiliar. And you know what? Other than what's written here, I don't know anything about most of those people that are mentioned, right? The Bible doesn't really mention them more than that after this. Especially since, this book of Nehemiah is the last of the historical writings of the Old Testament Jews. And so these are names that we're not familiar with. These are things, but still, Nehemiah gives us such a detailed record. You can look these people up. Right? There's going to be a record in Jewish history of some of these people. What does that do for our faith? Well, it just solidifies what we already believe without knowing for sure. We weren't there. But we have a record that's detailed. We have a record of names and people and places and things they did and areas they did it in. You can walk around Jerusalem and still see remnants of some of these things. That's a huge faith builder, Russ.
It tells you a lot about Nehemiah as a leader, too.
Oh, yeah.
How he subdivided the work. How he delegated authority to these different families and groups. You're responsible for this section, and you're this section. And they had to work together, but they had their own responsibilities.
That's right.
Even though women and children were involved in this,
Yeah.
the families were required to do their part.
That's right. So whenever they say the house of so-and-so, it's everybody. Right? It's everybody. Mark.
When they put the canon of Scripture together, this is a great proof text.
Oh, yeah.
You can check out these names and these places, the work done, and verify or not verify it. If something hadn't panned out, they would throw out the book of Nehemiah.
Absolutely.
It wouldn't belong in the canon.
Absolutely.
But here it is.
Here it is. Such a faith builder. Having these, even though these are people that we don't really know anything else about, we have this that tells us something about them. And I like how detailed Nehemiah gets in some of the sections, right? Where he says, I forget which one it is now. But he zealously made repairs. I forget which one that is. Baruch,
Verse 20.
verse 20. And after him, Baruch, the son of Zabbai, zealously repaired another section. And so he's even telling you how good of a job they were doing. And who's doing more. And this guy over here was zealously working. You know, when that says a lot about Nehemiah's leadership, as Russ said. I mean, we know that he was prepared, right? When he went to the king to ask if he could go do this, he knew what he needed. He knew how long he was going to be gone. You know, he needed letters, he needed materials, he needed all these things. But once he got there, he delegated all this work to be done. This guy is a true project manager, right? That when we think about project management now in 2025, we think of a guy that can head up a monumental task and delegate authority and responsibility and manage all of it. And that's what Nehemiah is doing, and he keeps detailed records. It tells us a lot about him, and it's a great faith builder for us.
And he gives credit to the ones that did it.
Absolutely, yeah. So what can we learn about the community of Jerusalem at this time? Based on the various groups that are mentioned. We got priests, we got goldsmiths, we got women, we got men of different districts. What does that tell us about Jerusalem at this time?
Pretty thriving city.
Say again?
Because it was, everybody was involved, not just the chosen few.
Okay, and to add to that, what Russ said, that it's a thriving city. There are a lot of people here.
They just need protection.
Right. They need their wall built back. They need protection. It's not that it's desolate, Renee.
We can also learn that he didn't hire this done from somebody else. Their own people built this wall out of commitment to God.
Yeah.
And it was everybody. It mentions many times the leaders of these groups. The high priest was the first one mentioned. They built. They started working. And it even mentions the Tekoites. The people worked.
Yeah.
But their nobles didn't.
Yeah.
And so not every group has those people,
Oh, yeah.
you know.
The first thing that came to mind when I was reading this yesterday was when the Amish raise a barn. You ever witnessed that? When the Amish go to raise a barn, they all show up, they all roll up their sleeves, and they all raise a barn. And you know how fast they put one up? In a day, most cases. They get out there and they get to work, man. And that's something that I think we can learn a lot from. You know, when there's work to be done, you don't have the 80-20 rule in place here. You don't have 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. You got 100% involvement from everybody that's there. Now, as Renee pointed out, we know that some groups, the nobles didn't come. You're going to have those every place, but for everybody that did show up, nobody was sitting on their hands. Everybody was getting dirty. And I think there's a great lesson for us in that. So how does this chapter demonstrate the importance of individual contributions to a larger goal? It's kind of alluded to it, but what does this tell you about each person and their involvement?
Everybody has a part to play, and it's necessary for each person to play that part for the accomplishment of the overall goal.
Right.
I think it's very similar, applied to the New Testament, 1 Corinthians 12, and some of the descriptions there about the body, many members, but one body kind of thing.
Everybody's important.
Yeah.
No one can say, well, I don't really matter here. Nobody here can say that. Nobody here can say, well, I don't really matter here. You matter. Your contribution, if nothing else, your presence is a contribution. Because when we look around the room and someone's not here, we notice, don't we? Right? I know we got a lot of people out of town right now. I was out of town last week, and when people aren't here, you notice. And so your presence even matters. Right? So it may not be that you're in charge of this or you do this, but just being here, being involved in the work, showing up. Maybe the work you do is after we leave here. Maybe you invite someone over to your home, you show hospitality. You provide a place to have a singing or whatever. There's involvement and there's work for everybody. And everybody here is important. And that's what this chapter really demonstrates, is that for every person was there, that was Brenton and then George.
The destruction of the temple and the mindset that the people would have had going into this project, and then the way that they would have come out of the project says a lot too, about their individual contributions. You have a sense of ownership when you do something like that. You know that the stronger that I build this wall, the better it's going to help protect these other families who are over on the other side building that part of the wall for me. And it's a group activity, and you're strengthening one another up.
Yeah.
Just by one little thing that you're doing.
Neither one of my kids are in here right now, but they can tell you. You're right around town with me. If there's a structure that I have done anything on, I'm going to tell you. I put the roof on that. I built that deck. I did this. I mean, whatever it is, and now with the more commercial jobs that I'm into, James Sackett he had to do something up at Wallace last week, and we just finished remodeling the Coliseum at Wallace, the basketball Coliseum, and he sent me pictures. He's like, man, this place looks great. Who did this? I'm like, I don't know. It was me. But, there's a certain level of pride that you take in your work, right? That you can say, hey, look what I did, right? There's ownership there. You're vested in it. Becky.
Just to piggyback off what Brenton said, a lot of the times when we think that we don't affect anybody, and so like he was saying, what we're doing on our side of the wall, we want them to work just as hard. So
That's right.
Showing up and doing your part will affect someone else, and you're just hoping you give your 100% just as someone else will give their 100%.
It's infectious, right? It's contagious. And you guys have heard me say 1,000 times, we ought to be the most contagious people in any room that we walk in. That whatever I've got going on, I want to get it on everybody, right? I want to be contagious with my zeal. I want to be contagious with my spirit. I want to be contagious with kindness. Whatever I can do to spread the fruit of the gospel, that's what I want to do. And it's contagious. Showing up and working hard spreads, right? I'll never forget. Now, this is a bit of a sidebar, but it's related, and you'll know why. I'll never forget my first Sunday here in this building. The times that I had come before and preached and didn't know that I was being, I didn't know that I was being looked at to be a preacher. I would have brought better lessons if I'd have known that. But I just thought I was here filling in. But I remember my first Sunday here officially, and how nervous I was sitting over there. Because it's real now. I'm here, and I'm going to be working with this group, and I'm over there, and I'm just all in my head. And worship starts, and the singing in here sounds good. Y'all know that. The singing in here sounds really good. But I kept hearing this high, loud tenor. I was like, I'm trying not to be obvious. I don't want to be like looking around the room, but I'm like, who is that? It was Steve, sitting right there where you are. And I noticed Steve's head's back, and his eyes are closed, and that vein in his neck is bulging like a water hose, man. And I was like, wow. I was like, that dude is lost in worship right now. I want to be like that. Because I was sitting over there and I wasn't really singing out because of how loud you can, I'm pretty loud and you can hear that. And I noticed Steve singing, I was like, oh yeah, man, me too. And from that day on, that's what I do. I might be the loudest person in my row, and sometimes Kelly will elbow me like, hey man, bring it down. But I can't, because Steve didn't. And I want to worship like that. It's infectious, right? When we are giving it our all, it's infectious, and that's exactly what you said, Becky and Brenton. That's exactly what's going on here. George, you had something? No, rest.
You said it already.
Okay.
One thing we forget, the wall was the goal. Who did all the cooking
Oh yeah.
and the cleaning?
Yeah,
And
man.
the hauling of water.
How important is that?
And the cutting down of the trees for those gates.
Yeah.
And all the beating out of the metal. And, there's tons of backdoor folks who never showed their faces at the wall, who all had to support the other.
And one can't do any without the other.
And you can't.
If you don't have somebody making food, you ain't going to work very long. If you don't have water, you're not going to work very long. And you got to have this guy making this so this guy can put it up. And it's all connected. And it's all so valuable and important. Man, if there's nothing we learn from this chapter other than a bunch of names that I obviously can't pronounce, it's that. Every single person matters when they contribute. And contribution is contagious. Right? There's something there that's probably a sermon somewhere down the line. But man, what a lesson that is. Any other comments about this chapter before we jump into chapter 4? Yes, sir.
It's good enough to notice there's a surprising lack of wall builders for the people building the walls, at least.
Yeah.
When we're going throughout our lives, doing things here, don't be concerned with not being an expert on something. I've taught a class, I'm not a teacher.
You did great, though. I was in there.
I appreciate it, but, put yourself out there. These people built a wall. They didn't know what they were. Somebody knew what they were doing, but these goldsmiths, perfume makers, Levites, priests,
Oh, yeah.
they had built walls before.
And here they are, building walls. That's a great observation. A lot of times people don't teach class because they're like, well, I've never taught class. Well, teach one. See how much you learn when you teach a class. Even if it's the baby class, man, because, Daniel and Angie have constructed this material so well and so thoroughly, and Kelly has been involved with a lot of that stuff, and I learn, whenever I'm watching Kelly put it together, I'm like, I didn't know that. And you learn so much from teaching, and so you're exactly right. Maybe you never taught. Well, teach one time. See what happens. It's so good. So contribution on every level. Maybe it's not teaching. Maybe you're just running off copies. Whatever. It's all necessary. Great observation.
Keith?
Yes.
I get lost in all the names.
Me too.
One thing I just noticed is that Nehemiah is not mentioned.
Yeah.
There is a Nehemiah.
There's a Nehemiah mentioned, but not him. Well, I think, obviously he's keeping such a detailed record. He's probably walking around, checking, supervising.
He's also not bringing that attention to himself.
That's right. That's right. It's not about him. It's about the wall. That's a great point too.
I tell you what he's doing, he's putting down little petty squabbles.
Oh yeah.
When they meet the wall, and it doesn't meet,
Yeah.
you got a problem.
Yeah. That's one of the things I used to say. I remember coming into a house one time that I had a crew working in, and the drywall just looked terrible. And I was like, man, did y'all do this in the dark? Maybe so. Somebody's got to be quality control. Somebody's got to manage the people. That's a great point.
He was probably spending all this time praying.
That too. I mean, when you're taking on a job that size, prayer is a good idea. Good idea. Moving into chapter 4. Chapter 4, we get into quite a bit here. This isn't as long as the last chapter, and not as many names in this one. So I want to read up through this chapter 2, and then we'll start making some applications to chapter 4. We probably won't finish today, but I want to try to keep us on track if possible. So we get into chapter 4. Now it happened that when Sanballat heard that they were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and very vexed, and he mocked the Jews. He spoke in the presence of his brothers, the wealthy men of Samaria, and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Are they going to restore it for themselves? Can they offer sacrifices? Can they complete it in a day? Can they bring the stones of life with the dusty rubble, though they are burned?" Now Tobiah the Ammonite was near him and said, "Even what they're building, if a fox should jump on it, he would break their stone wall down. Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Return the reproach of their own heads and give them up for plunder in the land of captivity. Do not forgive their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out before you. For they have vexed the builders." So we built the wall, and the whole wall was joined together at half its height, and the people had a heart to work. Now it happened that when Sanballat and Tobiah, the Arabs and Ammonites and the Ashdodites, heard that the repairs of the walls of Jerusalem went on, and that the places broken down began to be closed, they were very angry. All of them joined together to come to fight against Jerusalem and to cause a disturbance in it. But we prayed to our God because of them. We stood guard against day and night. Then Judah said, "The strength of the burden bearers is failing. There is much rubbish, and we ourselves are unable to rebuild the wall." Our adversaries said, "They will not know or see until we come among them and kill them to put a stop to the work." Now it happened that when the Jews who lived near came and said to us 10 times, "They will come up against us from every place where you may turn," that I had men stand in the lowest parts and spaces of the wall, exposed places, and I had people stand by families with their swords, spears, and bows. And then I saw their fear. And I rose and I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, "Do not fear them. Remember the Lord who is great and fearsome, and fight for your brothers, your sons and daughters, your wives and your houses." And now it happened that when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had thwarted their counsel, then all of us returned to the wall, each one to do his work. And it happened that from that day on, half of my young men carried on the work, while the other half took hold of spears and shields and bows and breastplates, and commanders were behind the whole house of Judah. Those who were rebuilding the wall and those who carried burdens took their load with one hand, doing the work with the other holding a weapon. As for the builders, each wore his sword girded at his side as he built, while the trumpeter stood near me. And I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, "The work is great and extensive, and we are separated on the wall and far from one another. At whatever place you hear the sound of the trumpet, there gather together to us. God will fight for us." So we kept doing the work with half the men holding spears till dawn, till the stars came out. And at that time I also said to the people, "Let each man with his young men spend the night within Jerusalem, so that they may be a guard for us by night and a worker by day." So neither I, my brothers, or young men, nor the men of the guard who followed me, none of us removed our clothes. Each took his weapon, even to the water. So things just got real, as they say. Right? When Sanballat and Tobiah see what's going on, they're excited and happy. No. What do they say? Well, first they're making fun of them, right? That's usually how it starts. You know, and here's the thing. When an argument eventually breaks down to insults, you know that you've won the argument, right? When someone has to resort to insulting me because they no longer have a point, I won. Doesn't matter what else you say at this point. If you're just going to insult me, it's because you got nothing else to offer. You got nothing else to contribute. These guys start out with that, so they're already losing. When you start with insults, you've already lost. And so that's what they're doing. And what's funny is that they mock the Jews and they insult them, and then what do?
They accuse them.
Say what?
They accuse them.
They accuse them and they pray. What do they pray for? That they don't succeed. How well do you think prayers like that are going to go? Especially after you just mocked and ridiculed somebody. You know, that's one of those dangerous things. When James, in the book of James, talks about with the tongue we set ablaze. With the tongue we bless and we curse. Brethren, these things shouldn't be so. The point is that God isn't going to hear that prayer, is he? You can't, give somebody the business 1 second and then turn around and pray and expect God to hear you. And that's exactly what they do. So what are the specific tactics or strategies employed by Sanballat and Tobiah to try and stop the work? What all do they do?
They try to sabotage.
Try to sabotage them. Right? If insults won't work, we're going to pray that God stop them. And if that doesn't work, then what? Gather an army. Let's fight. That's what it's coming down to. It's like everything they keep doing keeps failing. And so it comes down to violence now. And so you know from the get-go, when you start with insults and you end in violence, you really don't have a point. What is their motivation? Why are they so angry? My translation says vexed. That's like beyond angry. That's like really, why are they so bothered?
I think they're actually jealous of the fact that they were able to do this because they said, oh, you can't do that. That's
Yeah.
not possible.
Yep.
They see something got done and they didn't understand it.
Those that say it can't be done are usually interrupted by those doing it.
Right.
And this was a prime example of that. Right? And so they've gone from insults to prayers to sabotage. Now they're resorting to violence. Why do you think Sanballat and Tobiah were so vehemently opposed to the rebuilding of the wall? Besides jealousy, why do you think they were opposed to it?
I think verse 2 gives us a clue. It talks about speaking with the brethren. My translation says the army of Samaria. So if you've got Samaritans, there was for many, many years, going up in the New Testament times, the hatred and how they despised one another between the Jews and the Samaritans. I think there's part of that in there. Especially if you go all the way back to sort of the origin story of the Samaritans and where all that comes from. I mean, you kind of understand where all of that hatred comes from.
You know, Sanballat and Tobiah, these other guys, they're officials, right? They're people in power. Do you ever wonder how some of our politicians get so rich? I mean, everyone can look on the .gov website and see exactly what a senator or a congressman or a governor or even a president makes, right? That's no secret. But then when you look at somebody who's worth $2.7 million, and they started with nothing, how does that happen?
Hard work.
I appreciate you, brother.
Marketing in New York City.
That's right. There are deals going on, right? There is money exchanging hands, goods for services. What is building a wall going to do? It's going to impede that a little bit. They got gates now. You mean we just can't come in and do this and do this? We actually have to be accountable now. When you look by and large and I'm not going to get political. Y'all know my rule. But there are people who are upset right now because money's being cut from specific programs. Why are they upset?
They're losing their gravy train.
It's money, man. And so these guys are getting upset because now you're messing with you're messing with my stuff. You know, you can build your little wall, but you got gates? What's that about?
And you've got locks on the
Locks on the gates. Oh man, you mean there's a border? Go figure that. How did Nehemiah and the people respond to these threats and opposition? Go ahead, Renee.
So I like verse 9, which actually answers this question, I think. Nehemiah says, nevertheless, we made our prayer to God, but because of them we set a watch. They didn't just pray and then did nothing. They prayed and took action.
That's right.
So we let God take care of what we can't handle.
That's
but
right.
We take care of what we can handle.
They that wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. They'll mount up with wings like eagles. They'll walk and not run. Or no, they'll run and not walk and not faint. Waiting, the idea of waiting there is praying. Right? They that wait on the Lord, those that pray to the Lord for whatever it is they can't handle. But waiting doesn't mean sitting on your hands. Waiting means working. And so you're exactly right, Renee. They're going to pray to God. They're going to say, God, help us. Be with us. Protect us. Because we got work to do. They weren't just going to wait for God to come through and do something. They knew that God was going to do on his end whatever it's his will to do. But they were going to do what they had set out to do. And so they don't just pray and then go about it sheepishly. They get swords. They get shields. They get spears. So much so that I'm working with this hand and I got a sword with this hand. I mean, undeterred, man. But now, they obviously got scared. They got worried a little bit. And what does Nehemiah do to squelch that?
Reminds them who God is.
That's right. Every now and then, we need to be reminded that God is for us. Every now and then, we forget. And so we need that reminder. Right? When we begin to lose faith, when we get scared, when we get worried, we have to be reminded. I mean, because that's what's out there. It's opposition all day out there. And that's why coming back here on Sunday and Wednesday is so important, because it's just a reminder that God is for us and not against us. Yes?
I think even today, of course, we see it, but this reminds me of, it's funny is the best word I can say, it's not really fun. How when someone does something good, those who oppose it get angry.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not even, I mean, it could be something simple, or especially when it comes to maybe quote religious things, maybe, you're somewhere on vacation, or, we did a lot of fall and that kind of thing, and, we were going to go or we were going to do something. And it's like those people feel like we're automatically slapping them in the face.
Oh, yeah.
We're trying to do
Well, look at you.
right.
Yeah.
What we feel is correct, but we're not saying we're condemning you,
But we're going to go.
people automatically get angry, and not just that, but just any good deed that seems to be done.
Oh, yeah.
Good act or whatever, and you're not flaunting it. I mean, they were just doing, what they needed to do.
That's right.
You have that opposition of like, you're condemning somebody else because of what you're doing.
A guilty conscience. They're saying, we really should be up there. But because it wasn't their idea, and because they were going to lose for it, they condemned it. Don?
Renee was talking about, and you mentioned about, where he mentions about the Lord's going to fight for them. In that same verse 14, he says, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, your houses. We should be motivated to be in this struggle for one another.
That's right. Well, y'all, we're out of time. We will pick up here next Sunday. We'll finish chapter 4, maybe get into chapter 5. Thanks so much for the comments. It's always makes it better. Thank y'all.